Transplanting BareRoot Raspberries. Hello, my name is Charles Malky, biologist and plant expert with Ivory Organics, where we grow cool plants, and author of Saving the World with the Home Garden. And my family's always loved raspberries, especially my youngest. And we had raspberries here on our property, and as things kind of got shuffled around, we no longer have them. And I don't know if I can find some lessons where we've discussed raspberries and planting raspberries and raspberry care, but we're going to be repeating a lesson where we're going to now be planting BareRoot raspberries and just sharing the top 3 to 5 helpful tips on successfully growing your BareRoot raspberries, as this is the season for planting raspberries as you end and get out of your chance of frost depending on your grow zone area. And for here in Los Angeles, our chance of frost ends within the next week or two. And so this is an excellent time for introducing them into your garden as the temperatures begin to warm up starting the first week of February. And again, depending on what your grow zone is, raspberries can virtually grow in about 80 to 90% of the United States. So that includes grow zones from 11 all the way up to about grow zone 3, depending on the varieties of raspberries that you choose. So that is a huge window of grow zones that raspberries can grow on, which again is about 80 to 90% of the United States can successfully grow raspberries directly into the ground. And that's exactly what we're gonna do. There's a lot of reasons for growing raspberries in the backyard orchard, aside from it being so easy to grow, is that they're very delicious and nutritious and just so healthy for your body, being that they've got a lot of vitamins, a lot of minerals, and they also have a lot of antioxidant properties, which are very important for optimal health and performance of us. And instead of relying on medicines, plant medicine, which again accounts for somewhere between 40 to 60%, depending on the research you look at, are derived from plants. So it's really important to be growing this stuff organically, ideally, so that you can actually maximize on the health and the benefits that you're gonna bring to yourself and your family by eating your homegrown medicine. We're gonna be planting 3 varieties of raspberry here on our property together today. And let me just share a brief description about each of these varieties that I've introduced, starting with the Heritage Raspberry. And what's unique about the Heritage Raspberry, which you can read about on fourwindsgrowers.com, is that it's a #1 ever-bearing variety nationwide. So this is one of the most popular, sought-out raspberry varieties, the Heritage Raspberry. It grows about 3 to 8 feet and can spread about 4 to 8 feet as well, and shows that it's cold hardy and can be successfully grown in zones from 4 to 11. The other variety that I brought here is the Amity variety of raspberry, and reading here from Stark's Brothers, and they recommend that this variety be grown in a grow zone 3 to 9, so a colder variety of raspberry. But they also recommend that it not be planted in the warmest grow zone, such as we're here in a grow zone 10, as it would do better with more cold winter than what we're experiencing here in Los Angeles. Additionally, of all the 3 varieties that I brought, something else I made sure of is that they're all self-pollinating, self-fruitful, meaning one variety would be enough, but all of the sites will also share that by having more varieties, and I'm not talking about by planting more of the same plant. For example, if I had an entire backyard of Heritage Red Raspberries, that won't accomplish something known as cross-pollination. To accomplish cross-pollination, you need to plant at least 2 or more varieties of raspberries that bloom around the same time, so that the pollen from one variety of raspberry pollinate the flowers from a different variety of raspberry, resulting in cross-pollination. And a lot of research will support the fact that by doing so, you'll increase your yields, you'll increase the size of the fruit, and also enhance the flavor. So that's like 3 really important reasons that if you've got room for at least 2 varieties, to introduce 2 varieties. And this principle applies to pretty much like 80 to 90% of your fruit trees on your property as well, is to always consider the value of what cross-pollination can do for, again, improving yield, improving size, and ultimately improving the flavor of your fruit. The 3rd variety of raspberry that we're introducing to the property is called the Canby Red thornless variety of raspberry that was introduced, I believe in Oregon in the 1950s. And so this here is a thornless variety of raspberry, and what a treat to make sure that if you've got a raspberry bush on your property and you need to get into the bush in order to get to those fruit, that you can actually enter with less risk to harming your hands. And again, an ideal variety, especially if you've got children, to introducing them to harvesting raspberries without injury. So a thornless variety of raspberry, and this is also a good consideration for any entrances into your garden where you're going to have guests and so forth, to make sure they're not going to brush up against something that's going to cause any injury or harm, and just make your property a lot more inviting. So a thornless variety that's also very delicious. This here you can find on Monrovia, and I'm putting all of these links down below in the video description. And it says that it's nearly thornless raspberry, produces large, tasty, good quality, bright red berries. Strong, vigorous canes support a heavy summer crop. Ideal for freezing, canning, cooking, and fresh eating. Plant near a fence or a wall for support and allowed to ramble. Developed in Oregon, first introduced in 1953, and then recommended grow zones 4 to 8. So again, another variety that requires, according to Monrovia, even colder winters for optimal performance. But again, this is one that we found here in Los Angeles at a local nursery, and we're going to be introducing it to the garden. Hopefully another variety that we can share our successes, being that we're growing it in a grow zone 10. So here we are, starting with our first raspberry that's packaged in a plastic package, and then we've got this one over here that's in a little square container. And what we're going to do is we're simply going to open. It's got this metal twist tie on the very top. We're going to simply open it and pull the raspberry out of the plastic sleeve like so. Here it comes. Check out the packing material. It's just this wood chip mulch, but it is not soil, and do not plant this stuff. This is not what's supposed to be going into the planting hole. You're going to want to make sure you remove all of it, and we can now, and keep in mind, we're also saving it. We're going to use it in one of our last steps, just to let you know. But keep in mind, this is not soil, and this is not going to the planting hole. What you're going to do now, and here's the root system, you're going to see a little more clearly after we finish soaking it, and it's going to go into this bucket of water, label still attached, and we're simply going to soak the roots like so. It's going to take its first bath in, whether it's been several weeks or several months in this packaging, waiting for a nice good soaking. And we're going to repeat the process with our Amity red raspberry. Oh, and check this out as well. You can see the new sucker growth that's happening, and this is an excellent sign of the future canes that are going to be born, and really important for the future generations. I want to see if this other one has it, and sure enough, you can actually see sucker growth number 1, sucker growth number 2, sucker growth down there in the root ball. These are all going to be future canes, and really important for successive year after year fruit yields. For this third variety of raspberry that's been planted in a container, you can see that the soil that they used, coming a little closer, you can see they simply used a peat moss, which is really good for retaining moisture, ideal when they sell it to the big box stores or nurseries, as it requires very little water, and because every time you go to water, it retains water too well. But one of the issues with using this much peat in the soil is that it retains too much water and can also result in a phenomenon known as root rot, because it's just too damp in that root zone. What we're going to do as well is we're going to prepare this as we're doing those other two as a bare root raspberry. It is dormant, as you can see. There's no growth really happening, and even if there's very little growth, you could do what I'm about to do, which is we're simply going to replace the potting soil that they've chosen, and you can see that it really isn't growing in the pot. They simply use this for the packing material instead of using wood chips like the other company that prepared the raspberries. And the good news is, check this out, they put 2 raspberries in the pot. I'm hoping for those of you that have a little bit of experience in growing, you could easily tell that all they did is shove this root system into this container and backfilled it with peat moss. That's it. And peat moss is just broken down moss. So peat moss is their soil, and they put in 2 raspberries, this is pretty cool. I was really expecting 1 plant when I've actually got 2 separate individual plants. And you can take a look before I even go to soaking it, and I can see that the roots are already creating the next future canes, which right now it's 2022. So by 2023, this will be the fruiting cane, and obviously significantly larger than the 6-inch to 12-inch cane right now. But this will be several feet and supporting the next generation of fruit for 2023. And we're just gonna go and soak this in the bath as well. The location of your raspberry planting is very important. Consider planting it near a fence, or be prepared to have posts with string, or in this case we use cable, and we're going to be piggybacking off of the system that we have in place for our espalier pomegranate trees, a lesson we did about 6 months ago together. And I'm going to put that video link down below, where we basically installed these 4x4 posts. We ran these metal cables about every 2 feet apart, and we're using that to then train the tree to run very flat, so it stays out of the way of the garden fruit trees that are more in the rounder, more common shape. So these are espalier, flat growing, similar to as you would see in a vineyard style orchard with grapes. And what we're doing is, again, between the pomegranate trees is where we're going to be planting the raspberries and piggybacking that espalier system that we have in place to then train also the raspberries, again, between the pomegranates. What we're going to do first in preparing the planting hole is we're going to have to weed the zone, and you can see that we've got a lot of weeds here. We're going to first remove the weeds, as the weeds are going to be competing, if we allow them to stay, with the nutrients that we're going to be adding to the soil. And the goal is, when we go to water, when we go to improving the soil conditions, we want to make sure all of that goes to the desired plantings and not necessarily to these weeds. So first step is we're going to weed before we then prepare the planting hole. So the next step is preparing the planting hole. And what you're going to do is simply prepare the hole as deep as the root system. So over here, we only got to go a few inches deep. You can go a little wider. But what we're going to do is simply just make sure that the crown of the root system is buried. And even if you err an inch deeper, that's fine. Unlike 99% of your other fruit plantings, these raspberries can go a little deeper, as we're not relying on the primary cane as much as we're relying on the future generation of these future sucker growth, as you can see over here. Once the hole's been prepared, I'm simply going to add about a tablespoon of the Ivory Organic all-purpose fertilizers. Also contains plus azomite. It has all of the macronutrients, which are all 6 plant macronutrients. The primary nutrients are NPK, your nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. Contains also all the secondary nutrients, calcium, magnesium, and sulfur. The addition of azomite also offers the plants a lot of the micronutrients for optimal plant health. So I'm only going to take about a tablespoon of product and add it to the planting hole, as there's beneficial microbes in the product, and it's also going to attract a lot of the earthworms, beneficial bacteria and mycorrhiza as well to the product, which is going to help get the plants off to an excellent start. And this, again, being America's #1 raspberry variety, this is the first one that we're going to put in the planting hole. And here we go, putting that root system right there. And we can now put the soil back in place. What we're going to do next is simply go with our fingers and add a little bit of pressure around the root system to make sure all the roots are in contact with the soil. And we will continue to backfill the soil around it like so. I'm making a little ring around the tree so that when it comes to watering and also improving the soil with additional fertilizer, whether it be month to month or season to season, that the nutrients are going to stay around the root zone. The next thing we're going to do, being that it's still cool, we're only going to add a little bit of fertilizer also to the topsoil. So every time you go to water or it rains, the nutrients will go to benefit that root system. And then we're simply going to use the water that we use for soaking. So I'm simply going to get some water, and we're going to simply reuse that water So by feeding your plants organically, you're also benefiting the soil biology compared to using a synthetic fertilizer that will not benefit the soil biology, and also the synthetic stuff also can potentially harm the soil biology. What we're gonna do next now, I told you we're gonna save those wood chips that were used in the packaging materials. By adding these wood chips in the top layer, what it's gonna do is it's gonna help reduce the amount of water that we're gonna need for watering between days. It's gonna help the soil better retain moisture. It's gonna help reduce the chance of weeds sprouting in this particular root zone area. It's also gonna help in enriching the soil, because as this breaks down, it's gonna also bring a lot of those nutrients into the soil. Not much, but it's gonna offer the plant some of that benefit as well that's in the wood chips to improve that topsoil and that top layer and help improve further the soil biology in the top layer of the soil. The last step is now whitewashing the canes. And whitewashing the canes using the Ivory Organic, whether it be the 3-in-1 plant guard, which offers your plants protection against damaging summer sunburns, insects, and rodents, or you can use this product over here, which is a whitewash formula, also for protection simply against damaging summer sunburn and winter sun scald. Both of the products include diatomaceous earth as one of the inert ingredients, which is also effective as an insect repellent. But the 3-in-1 plant guard includes 7 natural oils that offers further insect repellent protection for your plant. And one of the things that can plague your canes, especially those prune surfaces, is that beetles can actually enter the cane and cause damage and harm to the cane. And if the cane's hurting, then that's ultimately going to affect your fruit yields and the overall health of the plant. So what we're going to do next is we're going to simply take off the label so we can then whitewash the cane, and then we'll return the label once the product dries in about 10 to 20 minutes. So I have this open can of the 3-in-1 Plant Guard color white, and we're going to whitewash the canes organically, as this product will offer protection for about a year or two. It's about as long lasting as paint, but the goal by doing it organically is that it's going to keep our organic soil organic compared to putting latex paint that's going to contaminate the soil for about 100 years or more. Another question we get quite often is, with all of these buds that are growing, is the product going to inhibit it? And one of the things that's really cool about the product is that the product dries on porously. It allows moisture and nutrients to pass, again, unlike latex and tar-based products. And so yes, the buds will swell, the buds will grow right through the product. And one other thing I want you to pay attention over here is this tip over here. Again, this is the entry point for beetles and termites. They usually enter the pruned surfaces and areas. But now, if there were any pests in it, they're gonna have to pass through diatomaceous earth, which is like crushed glass against an exoskeleton of an insect, and it's gonna harm it on the way out, and it's gonna keep pests from wanting to bore through the product and into the plant. And I'm gonna be doing this on both sides of the cane. So I've got a few more raspberries to get planting here in our backyard orchard, and I hope you found this lesson helpful in succeeding the next time you go to planting your bare root raspberries. If so, be sure to give us that thumbs up, and most importantly, share this lesson with your gardening friends and family. And as always, keep growing with Ivory Organics, and wishing you all happy gardening.